that's the same way, I guess, we look at the criticism of how much people raise for campaigns. I'm not certain how much the California campaign out there cost, but I'm certain it was well over $20 million for both Cranston and Chow out there, and I'm not certain when they figure out who won.
The population is much greater, though.
Right.
Thank you very much, Senator. I think one more question before we leave campaign financing.
Could I make one comment on TV, not C-SPAN, Senate TV? I would recommend the British system on political television. This is during the campaign process itself. In the British system, there is no such thing as a 30-second spot. It's not allowed. There is no such thing as the 1-minute spot. It's not allowed. The major political parties in Britain today, there are 3, are allocated amounts of airtime in hunks of 15 to 30 minutes. And you cannot run a film. You cannot hire one of these master filmmakers that dominate us as politicians, along with the pollster. Filmmaker and the pollster work hand in hand, and they tell us what to say, how to say it, what stuff to put on, what stuff not to put on. They become our master. Can't do that in Britain. You got to go on there yourself, or party spokesman, or you can go on with 2 people and discuss issues. But none of this canned junk. That's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's canned junk that is now dominating our political process. So, I think we ought to take a look at that. By the way, that doesn't even take a new federal law. Federal Communications Commission has inherent residual regulatory authority over our airwaves. You know who owns the airwaves in America? We own the airwaves. CBS doesn't own them. NBC, ABC, they don't own them. We own them. They're our airwaves. They have residual authority, and they could say, no more 30-second political junk. It's out. No more 1-minute political junk. It's out. And I think we ought to send a few senators and a few congressmen over for the next British election, whenever that might be, and let them observe how that campaign goes and see if there isn't some advantage to that kind of a sane, rational, intelligent, issue-oriented campaign vis-a-vis the kind of dreadful stuff that permeated America's airwaves in 1986.
Tom, isn't it the fact that the British also do not permit candidates to advertise in the newspapers?
Not sure about that, Hugh. You may be right.
I think so.
The average candidate for MP, Member of Parliament, spends about $4,800 per constituency.
Thank you, Tom. Now, if we could move on to committees. The committees, we touched on it briefly, but we need to hit it again. And Senator Mattingly, you alluded to it earlier, that possibly we could do more cooperatively between the Senate and the House, and even between the Senate, the committee, and the subcommittee. The problem seems to be, as Tom Eagleton has pointed out many times, and that is that a health issue comes up and it goes to 19 different subcommittees and committees, which means that that cabinet member has to come up and testify minimally 19 times. Is there a way, Senator Mattingly, that we could get some kind of joint effort on that? Is the jurisdiction such a problem that we can't get together, even on the Senate side, or can we get together with more joint sessions between the House and the Senate when it's the same issue, the same cabinet member testifying? Wouldn't that save lots of money and lots of effort?
Well, it certainly would, but I think, before you try to get, say, the Secretary of Commerce to come forth and testify between the House and Senate, probably if they could have one good lick of just coming before the Senate and going before all those committees, or to take it where it's more easily understandable, take the Secretary of Defense. Instead of coming forward and testifying for the Senate Armed Services Committee or the Senate Defense Appropriations Committee or some other committee we got over there, jointly come together. As I said earlier, the House Senator Thurmond, who's on Armed Services, chairs military construction. I'm on appropriation and chaired military construction, how we've met jointly and had the same person come forth and testify. It does save a tremendous amount of time, but once again, you get into a chairman of a full committee or a chairman of a subcommittee wanting to make certain that he tries to make 6 o'clock news. All due respect to raising campaign money, what they're trying to do is have a cabinet officer come into this room and testify, and somebody come up with the most absurd statement that they can, in order to get him to reply to something that will get them on the 6 o'clock news. They're dying for that 30-second bit, Tom, and I think you'll admit that.
Yeah.
So I think that would help be stifled if we could get, and I think this would have to come about by the majority and the minority leader of the United States Senate. I think it's high time that maybe those two people got together and said, in respect to even germaneness issues on the floor of the United States Senate or other issues where they used to command a lot more of authority, but if they would say, in fact, let us tell our people that they will begin to hold joint committees hearings. That's where you have to come from a leadership group like that, like the chairman, like the ranking minority and majority members. And I think that would be quite helpful. Not only would it cost less money, it would just expedite the process. And if we had the authorizing and appropriating committees meeting together, therefore, there wouldn't be this disagreement when they went to the floor of the United States Senate when they introduced the amendments. And I agree with Tom Eagleton. I'm not certain whether it's the Budget Committee needs to be wiped out or just the merging of the Authorizing and Appropriation Committee. But I know that 3 is too many. And, hopefully there'll be a better way to do that, and probably holding joint hearings, maybe even including the Budget Committee, would be fruitful.
Senator Eagleton, could you comment on that, especially on the jurisdiction of committees? We know full well that in this upcoming Congress, 100th Congress that we're celebrating, we know that the trade issue is going to be very hot. And we know that on the Senate side, it's going to come to at least 10 committees, conservatively speaking. Senator Eagleton, is there a way that we could cut some of the time on all of this testimony by combining any of those committees? Is it practical? Is it workable? Can we do it?
Under the present traditions and practices, the only way it could be accomplished is by rational accommodation, rational comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y. And Mac is right, and you're right, Maury, there is gross unnecessary duplication, overlap of jurisdictions. Trade is an example of an upcoming issue. It will be one of the predominant issues, I suspect, in the 100th Congress. And its jurisdiction, bits and pieces of jurisdiction, will be grabbed and claimed by a whole host of committees over here, primarily Finance and Commerce, but other bits will fly out into, obviously, other committees. On the House, it got so bad in the House. Think back to the major energy bill under the Carter administration. Think back to that. There were so many House committees claiming bits and pieces of energy that Speaker O'Neill had to appoint an omnibus committee of 40 members. He'd pick 5 off this and 5 off that and 6 off this and 4 off that. It's the only way that major piece at that time of energy legislation could get through the House, because every committee was going to hold sequential hearings. You'd have the Secretary of Energy, who at that time was Mr. Schlesinger. You could have had him up here almost the whole year. Monday at this committee, Tuesday that committee, Wednesday, and just the calendar would keep flipping. That's how many committees claimed a hunk of it, a piece of it. And no one was willing to give up their turf until Speaker O'Neill said, well, look, we'll bring it all together, this special ad hoc committee. Maybe we ought to do more of that. I don't recommend 40-member committees, I hasten to add, but maybe if a major trade bill is introduced here, an all-encompassing trade bill, which I suspect it will, maybe the new majority leader, Senator Byrd, working with the minority leader, Senator Dole, ought to get together and fashion sort of an ad hoc trade committee and say, look, this is an important issue. Let's hear it once. Let's have a special committee, go into it. Let's not have this needless and senseless repetition. That might be a way out of it. But unless people agree around here, these members of the Senate, I've done it, Mac's probably done it, we'll fight for our jurisdiction. That's built into us. So we say, my God, we have jurisdiction over part of that, and we just don't want to surrender it unless we can work it out. And maybe something like this can be worked out.
Senator Scott, how practical do you think that is? Do you think enough chairmen would give up their prerogatives to make this work?
Only if there were a unanimity on the part of the leadership. I think if the majority and minority leaders, together with the chairman of the Appropriations Committee and perhaps 2 others from the rank and file, would act in unison in support of a definite program, it would have a chance. but the current runs the other way. You've got to run against the undercurrent, which is the protection of turf.
Thank you very much. Senator Eagleton, we're ready to close this down, but we can't leave without talking about the ability of the Senate in oversight hearings. Obviously, Wall Street is very stirred up these days. We've read a lot of headlines. There are a lot of problems with SEC. There's a lot of concern and a lot of questions have come up from you about the SEC and what are they going to do about Wall Street and the mergers and what it does to the stock. But specifically, they want to go to you and say, Senator Eagleton, what is the effect and how powerful can the oversight arm of the Senate be?
Interesting you brought that up because it ties right into your previous discussion. There already is a turf fight to get Mr. Boesky. You see, Mr. Boesky, conceivably, unless he takes what we call 5, that's the Fifth Amendment, could be a witness down here with cameras flying for days. Now, his lawyer may not let him go through that, but there are other people around other than Mr. Boesky that could make juicy witnesses. Oh, obviously, the Securities and Exchange legislation, and that's what this would be, hostile takeovers, insider information, obviously it goes to banking and currency. And that's where, under the rules, the jurisdiction is. However, Senator Metzenbaum said this morning, he's on Judiciary, and he's got one of those all-encompassing committees that you mentioned, Enlightenment and Good Judgment Subcommittee. And he's going to claim jurisdiction of the Boesky map. So already we've got an example of a turf fight over a juicy tidbit that will end up on the 6 p.m. news, both local and network. So that's a classic example. Now, oversight. How well do we do it or don't we do it? We do it fairly well when there's a news factor involved. Mac and I and Pew have seen senators come to a hearing room and ask their 1 or 2 juicy questions, and they, will the senator yield? I've got to go to another committee meeting. Could I just get 1 minute to ask my 1 or 2 questions? You hope the camera comes over. You hit you with your fireball, and you hope that one's the lift for the news. I don't think we do as well in oversight as we should. To be in the Congress has 3 functions: to pass legislation, to see how that legislation is working once it's passed, and then to represent your people as an ombudsman. Those are your 3 functional duties as a member of this Congress. I think we do the ombudsman thing very well because it's in our political self-interest to do it very well, to do that casework, that missing Social Security check, that passport that the businessman needs to get to Europe, help the mayor of Buccolo, Georgia, get a sewer grant, et cetera. We do our casework very well because it's self-fulfilling politically. Oversight, we do in a slapdash, haphazard way. As the mood gets into us, we do a little or none. And I think of those 3 functions of being a senator, that's the one that we fulfill the least.
Thank you very much. Senator Mattingly?
Yes. One last comment, so there's not total discouragement all the time. But let me say that Senator Eagleton, Senator Scott, and myself and others have at time to time gone to a room called S407. It's a briefing room for classified information. And you'd be surprised how many of the senators, I would expect probably anywhere from 1/3 to 50% of the senators, will show up. I would just like to reassure the American public that really there are those United States senators that do that and try to make certain that your rights are protected and the rights of our country.
Yes, Senator Scott.
I would think that with certain exceptions, we have enough oversight already, and the oversight can be supplied by the relevant committees. The exceptions are those committees which are intentionally vested with that responsibility, among other things, for oversight, such as the Committee on Intelligence. But I remember when we created the Senate Committee on Intelligence, we tried to form a joint committee with the House, and again the turf got in the way, and we never were able to do it. That meant that whoever was the head of CIA or any other agency comes up not once but twice, and he has to make sure his testimony conforms exactly in the House and the Senate, or he'll have somebody down his throat. So that I would not overdo the oversight work except the committees that really need it as a relevant matter to legislation.
Thank you very much, Senators. We've enjoyed this enormously as we go into the 100th Congress, which, as you know, organizes and starts very quickly. I want to thank especially the participants and you in the audiences. You sent up very good questions, and we appreciate that. And Dr. Fleming, could you close?
Well, on behalf of your audience and the Strom Thurmond Institute, I thank you for a very insightful program. And I thank you, Maury, for bringing it together. And I recommend for those of you who want to do some further reading on the subject, Maury's book, which was recently published by Greenwood Press and Prager, called Hidden Power, the Seniority System in Congress and Other Customs. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I have the further privilege this morning of first welcoming our students and our teachers who are in the audience from the Close-Up Foundation. The Close-Up Foundation is entering its 16th year of service, which involves bringing teachers and students to Washington for the purpose of giving them the opportunity to observe close up the workings of our national government. So all of you, thank you for the tremendous job you do in the classroom for all of us, and thank you for being here this morning. Now I would like to introduce to you the host of our program today, Senator Strom Thurmond, for whom the Strom Thurmond Institute is named. Senator Thurmond, President Pro Tempore of the United States Senate, he is ranking member of the Armed Services Committee and Veterans Affairs Committee, and he is also chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I could say a great deal about our benefactor and friend, Senator Strom Thurmond, but I think it says volumes to mention that this man has spent over 50 years in public service, and he is just at home, just as much at home in this educational forum as he is on the floor of the United States Senate, because he started his professional career as a teacher. It is indeed a great personal pleasure and privilege for me to introduce Senator Strom Thurmond.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fleming, for your kind remarks. Senator Eagleton, Senator Mattingly, Senator Scott, Mr. Tobin, and other distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you to the Strom Thurmond Institute's panel discussion on the Senate machine and how it works. I am privileged to take part in this event today, one of a continuing series of programs sponsored by the Institute to increase public understanding and appreciation for government and public service. When I first envisioned the mission of the Institute and began working with my alma mater, Clemson University, to establish this facility, this kind of seminar is one of the functions I had in mind. Today, we are focusing our attention on the Senate as an institution of American politics. It is an institution that has been referred to as the world's greatest deliberative body, a reputation that is well deserved when I consider the number of all-night sessions I have attended over my 32 years as Senate. The rules and procedures governing the Senate are among the most rigid anywhere, and they have been altered only rarely in its long history. However, over the years, the Senate has changed with times, and it will continue to do so as circumstances warrant. In a real sense, that is what we are gathered here today to explore. The inner workings of the Senate and whether its rules and procedures should be changed in several key areas. Our panel of guests today are uniquely qualified to evaluate those issues. Senator Long, I understand, will be here in a little bit. During their service in the Senate, each established a reputation as seasoned, experienced, and well-respected legislator. Together with their combined experience in that chamber spans almost 8 decades. Individually, each of our panelists has become an expert in a particular field of interest, from defense policy to tax reform, from criminal law to foreign policy. Moreover, each of our panelists has, throughout the course of their Senate careers, gained remarkable insight into the procedures of the Senate, its traditions, its rules, and its limitations and potential. In addition, each participant is my good friend, and all the individuals with whom it has been a great pleasure to serve. I can think of no persons more uniquely able to discuss the themes and topics of this seminar than the senators present today. Finally, today's program is being moderated by Mr. Maurice Tobin, an accomplished author, attorney, and scholar. I want to welcome all of our guests, and I look forward to participating in this fine event. Again, I want to thank those who are on this panel today for their time. They're very busy people, and we do appreciate it, and I'm sure that you will appreciate their appearance here today, too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator, and thank you, Dr. Fleming. And I think we'll get well underway with the first question and the first concern that seems to be in everybody's mind, and that is the Senate paralyzed? Is this wonderful institution, which, as all of you know, have lasted all these years, and especially when you look over history and you see that really there are only 2 great countries in the globe today that had the same form of government since 1830. That, of course, is Great Britain and our own U.S. of A. And then all the others, the Chinese, 7 forms of government that's in its hands, the government fall by the wayside. Don't hear about the Habsburg today. But you hear a lot about the Senate. We're here today not to criticize, but to point up some of the concerns that are shared by all of you. Now, I'd like to start today's panel by calling on both Senator Scott, who's the distinguished minority leader you know, and has served so long and so well in the Senate, and Senator Eagleton. Both of them are floor procedure experts. They know how to maneuver. They know the tactics of the Senate very well. And I think both of them can address those questions of concern that you have. Senator Scott, I'd like to start with you and ask you just comment generally about your feelings about today's Senate and how it can be improved as far as we look and we see that there's no Senate appropriations bill that has been passed. We are operating the whole country on continuing resolutions. Many have complained that there just isn't enough activity coming out of the Senate. What are your remarks to that?
Mr. Tobin and my colleagues, once and future colleagues, of course, Senator Thurmond, I first want to congratulate all those who have succeeded in putting together a challenging organization such as the Strom Thurmond Institute, and you honor in so doing one of the most distinguished senators who has ever served in the Senate, a man who is a friend of all of us, whom we admire greatly, and whom I turn to many, many times for advice and guidance. In bracket day, Senator Eagleton and myself, I think you might draw a comparison between someone diving off the high board, since I have now been 10 years out of the Senate, and someone diving off the low board, Senator Eagleton, who is about to make that leap from lesser distance. As to the Senate itself, discussion will elaborate your concerns and questions will be welcomed. My own concern is that which all of you have felt and expressed, and that is whether the Senate continues as a fully functioning body. Is it an effective body? The answer to the second question is certainly no. But was it intended to be an effective body? And that question is unanswered. The whole thrust of the creation of the Senate as an institution by the Founding Fathers was to establish a unique focus of protection for all those persons who might otherwise fail to receive that assurance. That is, the U.S. Senate is the only legislative body in the entire world where it is possible under our Constitution for a single member to hold that body off long enough so that the weakest voice in this country may be heard. It is a protection against the tyranny of the majority, yes. It is even more the assertion that no person's cause shall go unheard if some one person wishes to speak for it. Andrew Jackson is supposed to have said one man with courage is a majority. Not always in the Senate. One man with determination, one woman with determination can alter the course of legislative history. Now that carries with it a great many shortfalls, and we'll discuss those as we go along. Among the shortfalls are the day-to-day inability of the Senate to move according to a predetermined course, gradually, if solely, toward a desired end. There are many recommendations you will hear here. One will be, shall there be electronic voting? I personally would happen to favor that. I think that anything that speeds up the course of events on the mechanical or logistical side is to be considered. And I certainly felt that television would. Whether or not the shortcomings of the Senate, the failure to satisfy the public urge for action, are affected by television remains to be seen. But I have a feeling that some of the ills which have befallen the legislative process can be corrected by public opinion. For the fact that not only C-SPAN, but the networks generally and local stations constantly bring to public's attention and awareness goings on which hitherto not have created much excitement. Take, for example, filibuster. The attempt to put some limitations on the filibuster has occupied the Senator's attention, especially at the beginning of each session, for many years. It is quite likely that the desire of the general public will be expressed through a greater awareness that the business of the country be proceeded with, perhaps with all deliberate speed, but then at the same time the right of that own deceased individual shall continue to be preserved. We have discussed as we go along many of these things, such as humaneness and the improvement of the quality of life. By the Senate has night sessions. We'll probably discuss a game of legislative chicken, which is played between proponents and opponents here, and of course always at the expense of the other body. So it seems. I'm delighted to be here. I mustn't talk too long, but I do think that you'll get some insights here which will leave you better informed and better able to pass on to your students what you have heard. It's a privilege to be here.
Senator, thank you very much. And you never can talk too long. Anyone with as much sense of history and love of the institution as you have never, ever speak too long. Now we'd like to go to Senator Eagleton, particularly Senator Eagleton, as I say, very seasoned, having spent almost 2 decades in the Senate, so knows its ins and outs very well. Particularly like for him to address some of the questions that seem to clog the machine. For instance, in the first session of the 99, which we're just finishing, some 3 months out of 12 months we spent calling the roll and quorum calls. We'd like the Senator to go into how can that be avoided. Of course, some of it's necessary, we realize. The other procedures he's very familiar with. Senator Eagleton.
Thank you, Mark. First of all, I'm highly flattered being the only Democrat here and it takes 3 Republicans off me. I hope I'm up to the challenge. Secondly, I'm delighted to be part of any forum presented by the Strom Thurmond Institute. As I leave the United States Senate in a few weeks, I will carry many memories. And one of those memories will be of Senator Strom Thurmond, who in the history of the United States Senate is ultimately written, if ever it be so, will be one of the big figures in that history. He is a fine gentleman, and I do not always agree on each issue, but we get along very, very well, and I think we have a mutual respect and admiration for each other. I know it's on my side, and I hope it's on his side. I would suggest that the topic of this forum not be the Senate machine and how it works, but it should be the Senate machine and how it doesn't work. The Senate hit its peak in 1850 and has gone downhill since. In 1850, in the United States Senate, there was, for instance, James Calhoun of South Carolina. There was Daniel Webster. There was Henry Clay. There was Thomas Hart Benton of my own state of Missouri. Later, he profiled and courage in John F. Kennedy's book. William Seward. Giants of their time, of intellect, of dedication, etc. And it was the peak of the United States Senate, and that's why it was once referred to as the greatest deliberative body on earth. I think that accolade belonged to the time of 1850. It most certainly does not belong to the time of 1986. The United States Senate is not, by any reasonable calculation or evaluation, the greatest deliberative body on earth. And I'll just pick off in sequence a few of the reasons and a tiny little cure, but I'll not elaborate because I think we'll do some elaboration as discussion expands. So Scott has already mentioned the filibuster. We thought we had cured that back some years ago when we reduced the number of votes necessary to cut off debate from 67 to 60. It was thought, well, we can muster 60 votes and terminate this otherwise interminable debate. But a senator from Alabama, no longer among the living, discovered a loophole, as do tax lawyers discover loopholes in our rules, and invented what's called the post-closure filibuster. And by that, you can run to the desk and buy out 5,000 amendments, whatever number you want. And even if 60 senators vote cut off debate, you can start calling up these amendments one by one in perpetuity. And it's not only the utilization of that technique that slows down the Senate, but more importantly, it is the threat that a senator or 2 senators will utilize that technique that slows down the Senate. A senator or 2 may go up to the majority leader, in this instance now Senator Dole, say, Senator Dole, If you call up Bill X, I want to tell you we're going to file 1,000 amendments at the desk. You can get co-chair maybe after a week or 10 days of wrestling around, but then got all those amendments and we'll sink you. Dole says, as a practical person, well, yeah, my hands tied. You guys are going to do it. I'm done. That bill's dead. That amendment's dead. That's the post-closure filibuster. The non-germaneness matter. You can have a D.C. appropriation, District of Columbia appropriation bill on the floor. You can offer an amendment on Contras in Nicaragua, if you're so minded. You can offer anything out of the Encyclopedia Britannica as an amendment, anything that's pending on the floor. That's ridiculous. No, of no other major legislative body, even the St. Louis Board of Aldermen doesn't permit that kind of shenanigan. Maybe we ought to consider having a Rules Committee in the Senate that has the same power as the Rules Committee in the House. I say maybe on that one. I'm convinced already about the filibuster rule. I'm convinced already about non-germane. I'd be willing to hear the debate on whether we ought to have a Senate Rules Committee. We have one in names in charge of mops and rooms and things like that. But have a real Rules Committee that acts as the traffic cop, feeding legislation into the floor of the Senate just as it does in the House of Representatives. Reserve judgment on that. Another point, moving along.